Hello and welcome to UK NBA. This is episode 10, part 3, where I get to be the Chris Tarrant, if you like. This is question time, also known as Ask Pete. If you remember last week, Pete virtually got himself disqualified, but I'll have to admit it was an awful question on my part. There are many left-handed players in the NBA, so it was a bit of an absolute terrible question. It was shocking, wasn't it, really, to be fair? This is the part of the show where we test Pete's knowledge, 7 questions, and at the end, to wrap up the segment, I'll have a Did You Know, which will just increase your basketball knowledge a bit before we head into part 4. Right, so let's kick on with question time. Just remember, Pete has not seen these questions. He doesn't know the answer to them. If you'd like to suggest some questions for me to ask Pete, contact me on Twitter, and we'll do that, and we'll ask Pete in the next episode.
In the comments.
Yeah, but you'll see it then, won't you? In the comments.
Yeah, but... Yeah, true.
Yes, do it to me on Twitter.
If you haven't got Twitter, then...
if you haven't got Twitter, do it on the Facebook page, and I'll make sure that Pete doesn't see it. or at the comments below. Right, let's kick it off then. With question number 1 is this. Who is the coach of the Indiana Pacers?
Well, plenty of watching the NBA Finals the last 2 years, the Eastern Conference Finals. That's Frank Vogel.
Straight in there with the correct answer. That's 1 point. Don't forget on UK NBA, the first 2 questions, it's always who is the coach and the name of a stadium. So going into, eventually we will have done them all. But just before we do, we're on to question number 2, which is where do the Boston Celtics play their home games? Don't say Boston because that's just not the answer I'm looking for.
No, I won't say Boston. Although they do play in Boston. They do play at the TD Garden.
Yeah, that's the correct answer. They play at the TD Garden Arena, so that's 2 out of 2. Brilliant start. Question number 3 is a little bit more difficult. It gets harder from here on in. Question number 3 is name the 2 teams involved in the highest scoring match in NBA history.
Trying to think who it was now. I have seen it was on an NBA ESPN special, the one that won the games during halftime, and they were interviewing all the players, like one of the greatest games in history. I think it was it the Pistons and the Nuggets?
It's 3 out of 3, ladies and gentlemen. It was the Pistons and the Nuggets. It was December the 13th, 1983, in an absolutely astonishing game. Yeah, you're right. The Detroit Pistons scored 186. The Denver Nuggets got 184. How many overtimes was that have gone into?
I think it was several overtimes. I remember seeing it says, pretty much, interviewing the players, and the players were saying every single shot they took was going in the basket. And
yeah, it's just one of the greatest moments in NBA history of all time. Question number 4 is this. Who coached the West team for the 2003 All-Star game?
Well, I wouldn't have been watching NBA back then.
You'd have only been 9 years old.
Yes, so I had to delve into my knowledge. Obviously, would have been a coach back then. I'm trying to think of one coach. There's I can't quite remember his name. He was at the Dallas Mavericks recently. Avery Johnson, I think it is.
I'm afraid that's the incorrect answer. The correct answer is Rick Edelman. So far, you scored 3 out of 4. And a continuation from that question, which you probably won't like either, to be honest, is who was coaching the East team in the 2003 All-Star Finals?
Again, I've got to think of another coach in the East. Again, I can't think of any coaches from the East. I'm going to just say Pat Riley.
Correct answer is Isaiah Thomas. So out of 5, you've scored 3. Question number 6 is what is the highest crowd in NBA history? Okay, to be fair, I have to give it you to a certain 1,000. I'll give it you to 5,000, just like I did last week.
It's going to be one of these. I'm going to assume it's going to be one of these ridiculously big arenas, probably an all-star game or an international game or something. So I'm going to say about 90,000.
It's 108,713. So I can't give you that point. It was for a 2010 All-Star game that was in Texas. It's a stadium that's usually hosts Super Bowl and concerts and things like that, but it hosted the 2010 All-Star game. It was a phenomenal match as well. So question number 7 is former Miami Heat and Cavaliers player Shaquille O'Neal, who's called 6 on the All-Score Hottest chart. He's got a platinum-selling rap album. He's had 4 albums out, but he's got a platinum-selling rap album. I'm looking for the name of that album.
Well, I do believe it's his nickname as well. Was it Shaq Diesel?
Correct.
Oh, at least I got a... Was that 3,
Peter Wells
4?
on this week's episode of Question Time scored 4 out of 7.
That's
yeah, that's not too bad. That's not too bad.
Just over half. So.
Yeah, it's just over half.
Yeah.
So, well done. And this week's Did You Know, just to wrap up the segment before we move on to Would You Rather. This week's Did You Know which is that I really was surprised about this. You know, the jump balls used to be after every basket. Can you imagine how frustrating that would be?
Imagine if the one player who was on the team that scored the basket was like 7 foot and the other guy was like 6'7".
Exactly.
He would win it every time, which means you could have a game where it'd be like after a quarter.
That's all they were doing. Basket, jump ball. I'm glad that one was scrapped because that's a terrible rule.
It would take like 5 hours to complete a game as well. Like basket, okay, jump ball, guys.
Basket, and then carry on and on and on. Yeah, so that's it. 4 out of 7 for Pete. That was your Did You Know. Thank you for joining us on this segment. Next up is Would You Rather. See you in a minute.